Are you making the right decisions about Social Security? I'm Erik Brenner, securing the facts about Social Security, next on Your Wealth Health. Hello and welcome to Your Wealth Health. I'm Erik Brenner, owner of Hilltop Wealth Solutions. And if you're watching us today on Facebook, please share us with someone who could use this information. And thank you for watching us on yourwealthhealth.com. Today I have Bill Davis with me and Matt Aurenz. They're private wealth advisors with Hilltop Wealth Solutions. And Bill is in the studio with me. We're sitting about 8 feet or more apart. And Matt is beaming in from his home in Valparaiso. He's our Director of Wealth Management and a financial advisor with the firm. So today we're going to talk about the second show in which we're talking about securing the facts about Social Security. Last week we addressed the common misconceptions about Social Security, and we examined strategies people should consider to get the most out of it. Today we're actually going to look at an actual case study involving a typical couple and the decisions they must consider regarding Social Security. One of the reasons we wanted to focus on Social Security is a recent Harris poll of more than 2,000 adults found that 80% of the people asked felt like they would change their financial advisor if their current advisor did not know enough about Social Security. People are realizing how important it is, and COVID-19 pandemic has people changing their plans about retirement. So we put together a case study to help clarify this, but before we get started, Matt, what do you think about that recent poll that came out and how people should think about it?
I think it's huge. I think it shows that people are looking to their advisors for more than just simple investment advice. They're looking for their advice when it comes to their entire financial picture, whether it be taxes or insurance or estate planning. But Social Security planning and retirement planning is a huge, huge thing that goes hand in hand. And you have to know how your Social Security is going to work with your income when it comes to pensions and then when it comes to investment income.
Great. Okay, so let's jump into the case, and hopefully you will find this information very valuable. I would say this is somewhat of a typical case that we often see. And so, Bill, here we have a couple that is both 61, and they're both hoping to retire at 62 if possible, so congratulations for that. They've been pretty healthy, and they do have savings and pension. So as they're thinking about this retirement at 62, Bill, what are some of the important things that they need to think about?
So now they've qualified to take early Social Security, and with this segment being on Social Security, that's going to be an important calculator to run to determine what are the payouts in combination over the next several years to full retirement age. They're going to need to determine what their goal is, and understand what their income goal target is. And then we can begin to take Social Security calculations. They're going to have pension optimization decisions. They're going to have withdrawal decisions to be made, and which bucket of money are they going to withdraw from. And so each one of these could have a different calculator. Certainly the pension's going to have a number of different options available to them. So now how do you actually put all of these calculators to the best use so that they're going to achieve their retirement goal, their retirement income goal, and do it in the most tax efficient manner? I think that without the Social Security calculator, it's going to be difficult for a couple to best determine where they should draw their income from, because it's just not an easy decision. Many people just say, well, if I take my Social Security early, I'm going to get X amount of money, and then maybe I'll take a little bit of money out of this bucket or that bucket, or I'll work part-time. And so it really requires a professional team to run different calculations so that they can determine what the options are to have the most tax-efficient income stream in retirement.
Yeah, so Matt, we talk often about, in this couple, in this case, are fortunate enough to have a pension. So they both have pensions. But really, if you qualify for Social Security benefits, you do have a pension, and we encourage people to think about it that way.
That's exactly right. The Social Security is there as a fixed stream of income that you're not going to outlive. And so you have various options on when you withdraw it. You have various options on what that survivorship option is going to look like as well, spousal benefits. And you really have to plan ahead, because you only get one choice, one decision at this, and improper planning can be costly.
Yeah, so this is really important, and with longevity now and people's health really being different than even what it was 15 or 20 years ago, I think it's really critical on these decisions. So let's talk about, in this case, if we take a look at the graphic, John and Sally benefit at age 62, you can see, would be $1,581, and you can see Sally's would be $690. And if they both claim at full retirement age, 66 and 8 months, you can see the benefit now jumps for him at $2,300 bill, and hers would be $1,070.
Yeah, so how do you sort all this out? I mean, you could, in a simplistic way, you could see that John's benefit over doubles from 62 to 70. And then what's not shown on the slide is every year that his goes up, her potential claiming half of the spousal benefit could come into play as well. And we don't even have that complicated calculation on here. But yeah, just look at the major differences between 62 and 70. You'll see that it's over double the benefit by waiting, but we should be considering possibly the John's spouse, Sally, possibly taking something a little earlier. So it's a complicated matrix that that only sophisticated tools can sort out to help them understand what's going to be the best benefit for them.
And I think, Matt, one of the things that we always point out to folks is they have to remember to have the cost of living adjustments built in, because Social Security does have cost of living adjustments along the way, and so that certainly can impact the decision down the road.
Right, exactly. The cost of living is obviously going to be a huge benefit for them long term. And I think the other thing that we hear a lot about is what are potential tax implications with my Social Security benefit, and will those reduce my benefit depending on my other type of income structure?
Yeah, so Bill, in this case that we're working through, in each situation's different, but anytime, and what we want to stress is anytime you take your benefit early, prior to your full retirement age, there's a reduction in benefit permanently.
That is correct. And I like to refer to it as disinheriting your spouse, because in actuality, that's what you're doing. So if the higher income earner does accept a lower benefit age 62, that's now locked in for life. And if that person predeceases, so in this case, if John predeceases Sally, she's going to be receiving a much lower benefit down the road, since the male usually predeceases the female.
Yep. Thanks, Bill. Well, there are other issues that should impact decisions about Social Security, including what happens if John or Sally dies. How should they plan for that possibility? We'll have some answers when we come back on Your Wealth Health. Welcome back to Your Wealth Health. I'm Erik Brenner along with Bill Davis and Matt Aurenz. As we continue our case study of John and Sally Smith, we want to talk about some more issues that they need to consider when figuring out what they should do and when they should start taking Social Security. So there's a lot of different factors, as we think about this. And Bill, we wanted to just take a look at the cumulative potential that this couple has in drawing Social Security over their retirement lifetime. And I think a lot of times we find where people are quite amazed at the amount of benefit they'll receive.
Yeah, and for this graphic, we've used cumulative benefit out to what is expected life expectancy, okay? So that doesn't mean anything about how long someone is going to live. It's just the standard current life expectancy for a male and a female. So you'll see on the graphic that, if they both claim early, they have a cumulative benefit just short of $900,000 over traditional life expectancy. If they both were to claim at full retirement age, that's 66 and 8 months, that is over $1 million, $1,042,000. If they both claim early, which is 62, you're at $1,097,000. If Sue claims early and John claims later, it's $1,081,000, and then the maximum lifetime nominal benefit is $1,114,000, which, by the way, is not both of them waiting to age 70. So that's actually, we'll see on another graphic, a combination strategy to get them the maximum nominal benefit. But most people would think, well, I'll be able to collect the most over my life expectancy if we just both wait till 70. We're not saying that everybody should wait to 70. We think that it's a person-by-person decision, couple-by-couple decision, and it requires us to really utilize a sophisticated calculator that, as you see, there's just 5 of the solutions that came up with over 7,000 combinations that the software looked at to come up with the top 5. It doesn't mean that's all there is. There's over 7,000 options, but the software allows us to optimize by doing that, and then we can apply to that the other income streams and the taxability, because when you think about a couple claiming $4,000 or $5,000 a month, that's at $50,000 a year, let's say, if they get to the 50% taxability situation, you could be talking about increasing their taxable income by $25,000 or $30,000. So that's a big issue. That
is a big issue. So Matt, on this, we often say that folks, again, are surprised at the overall benefit that they could receive, $1 million over their lifetime. And so I know the next graphic we have kind of breaks down a couple of the strategies in this case.
Right. So if we take a look at just the graphic on the screen, we'll take a look in this scenario of option 1 and option 5 of these cumulative benefits. And the advantage here is it kind of breaks down when John and Sally begin to take it. And so, John is going to begin to take that money on strategy 1 in January of 2021 on his record at age 62 and collect $1,581 a month. Susie, now you'll see, she's going to claim as well on her own record at 62 and collect $690. But because her benefit is less than half of John's, she actually will get a spousal add-on, which will pay her an extra $84 a month to equate to half of John's $1,581 a month. And then at some point, based on their life expectancies, John passes away first. Susie would then turn over to a spousal benefit at age 83 in this scenario and begin collecting $2,444 a month. As you can see, the combination of all of those equates to about $884,000. Now, when you take a look at the maximum lifetime strategy in option 5 on this, again, it's showing the same kind of scenario, but at different start dates on when people are going to take it. So Sally is claiming on her record at age 66, 10 months, she'll receive $1,070. John's claiming at 69 now, he'll collect $3,174 a month. And then Sally will again claim an add-on spousal at 69, which will pay an additional $49 a month. And then again, the same thing, John passing away on an apples to apples scenario here. And Sally would would begin to collect $42, $72 a month. So, now you're looking at about 1.114. And again, this goes back to the scenario that you were just saying, is it's not always the best case scenario for both spouses to defer to age 70. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But in this scenario for them, it would benefit them to not wait for both of them to wait till age 70. So they have two options here, but this is a nice way to break down when you begin to claim, what spousal benefits look like and what survivorship options look like, so you can get a clear picture of does that scenario look like it would play out in our financial life.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So, Bill, what about somebody, and in this case, maybe they claim because they're planning on retiring at 62, so that's fortunate that they can do that, and taking some of the money and reinvest in it versus not taking it. What do they need to consider with that option?
Yeah, I think people are working longer. People have healthier lifestyles, and and they just enjoy working. So. I always tell people that once you get to full retirement age, there's not going to be any income limit. So, when I was referring to 50% taxability of Social Security, I was not talking about the 2-for-1 cut in Social Security for people that are not at full retirement age. So now you could actually consider full retirement age, taking your benefit, and if you're still working, banking it in an investment vehicle. And in this case, for John and Sally, they could accumulate another bucket of money that would total about $113,000. So now you're going to have additional money that's going to be accumulated over those years till you retire at 70 or 71, or if you never retire. But you really can't you can't pull your benefit if you're working full time because of the 2-for-1 cut after $18,200 in earnings.
So that typically doesn't make sense, because why start drawing it?
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So what are some other factors Matt, that we want people to think about as they're thinking about their Social Security options?
I think other factors, a huge one that I think of is your current medical condition, your current health status. I think if John in this situation, let's say he has a chronic illness, and his life expectancy is, maybe only another 5 to 6, 10 years. You just don't know with medical science. Well, let's just say that's a concern for them. To Bill's point earlier, you don't want to disinherit Sally. He wants to make sure that he's deferring his benefit as long as possible, with the thought process that he's got to make sure to provide some type of spousal benefit, the maximum number available for Sally. So that, to me, is a huge one that's overlooked oftentimes. I think many times people in that situation say, I'll claim now and get as much as I possibly can out of that Social Security Administration, because if I die, it's gone. But they're not thinking about the fact that, if that's a higher number than my spousal benefit, that's actually going to be a huge, huge income source that they're going to lose out on if you do die prematurely. That's probably the biggest one in my thought, Eric.
Yeah, and this example we used on that graphic earlier was at 62, he gets a little over $1,500, and at age 69 it's $3,100. So that's double the benefit.
Right.
That he passes away and it goes on to his spouse, which is a big thing. So what if you're not married? What are the decisions for those who don't have a spouse? We'll take a look, and we'll discuss what to look for when you want good advice about Social Security when we return. Welcome back to Your Wealth Health. I'm Erik Brenner along with Bill Davis and Matt Aurenz from Hilltop Wealth Solutions. And today we've been looking at a case study for an everyday couple and the decisions that they have to make. But Bill, what if someone is not married, or maybe a widow or widower? What are some different decisions that they need to think about when it comes to drawing Social Security?
So they're going to need to know their, if they're divorced or widowed, and they had been married for greater than 10 years, they're going to need to know the primary insured amount, the PIA, of their deceased or divorced spouse, because that's going to go into the calculation as to which is the higher benefit that they would receive. So they're going to receive the greater of their own earned benefit or the spouse or the divorced spouse benefit amount.
So, with that, and we could do a whole nother show on that, because there becomes a lot of, a lot of rules around there and strategies. And in fact, if you are divorced or a widower, you could maybe draw off their benefit and let yours accumulate, and as well as some other strategies. But, Matt, we also look at kind of somebody that is single, and they're looking at retirement. Should they maybe start drawing the money? They really are not thinking about a surviving spouse. Should they start drawing the money, maybe take it, reinvest it? How do we think about that?
I think the biggest thing there is, do you need the money? Don't you need the money if you're going to keep working? Bill talked about reduction in benefits earlier. If you are still working or not. So those are some of the first factors that you're going to have to consider. The next thing is, what other types of income sources would you have? So are you being paid a pension? If you are or you are not, you have to determine, how does that influence the need for the Social Security, or what other types of investment sources do I have, or income sources? So those are the main factors. Once you determine, do I need it or don't I? And if you don't, I think then you can begin that discussion of, what does it look like to begin to withdraw your Social Security? And what would a reinvestment strategy look like? And what type of pool of money could I have that eventually I could use later in life to purchase things, live on, and or pass on to some family members or a nonprofit, something of that situation.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the screen here. And we have, in this case, Joe, Bill, and his full retirement age was 66 and 2 months. And his benefit was $2,150. And if he delays until age 70, his benefit was projected to be at a little over $3,000. And so this really shows that the potential break-even point is around age 81.
Yeah, right. And, I guess people don't think about the fact that if they are single or divorced or widowed, that, there's no inheriting, no heirs can inherit their Social Security. So this could be a strategy that for somebody that wants to, maximize the amount of Social Security they receive while they're still working, set it aside, and whatever amount they've set aside is going to be accumulated and passed to the beneficiaries or their heirs, where if they didn't do the strategy, they wouldn't have had any accumulated assets to pass on to their heirs. So so you're right. The break even is right at age 80. That they would have to live till age 80 to wait to take Social Security till age 70. So that's a long time, and that's a lot of accumulated benefit that you could leave on the table if you didn't go ahead and take it at your full retirement age.
Yeah, we have a graphic here of actually beginning to draw between that period that's, full retirement age and age 70, assuming a rate of return here that, there could be another 113,000 plus in a bucket there. And as Matt said earlier, they could leave it if they have heirs, they could leave it to a charity, they've accumulated the money. It is important to note this is before all taxes calculated.
Correct.
So, if someone's continuing to work and they're drawing benefits, they have to determine if that makes sense or not. So, there's other factors, taxes being one of them, that has to come into consideration here.
That's right. Yeah, and we're not taking that. We're just trying to keep it simple, apples to apples, not looking at a net calculation of after tax.
Yeah, yeah. So the other thing I think that's important to remember is in all of our equations, and oftentimes it's overlooked where someone's calculating whether they should take it or not, as we see them that they don't really put the inflationary factor in there. And so, Social Security has, increases in their benefits, and it's based on an index. It's not based on, an action at Congress. And so that's important to know as well. Well, I'd like to point out this Harris poll that we talked about. We talked about this at the top of the show, where 2,000 adults found that 80% said they would look for a new financial advisor if their current advisor did not have good advice about Social Security. So what are some of the questions, Matt, that people should ask their advisor and determine if they are actually educated enough and understand Social Security enough to give them the good advice?
I think probably one of the main questions I would say people should ask is, how is this going to influence my spouse if we lose an income stream? Where are we at if we lose an income stream because somebody dies prematurely? And how do you calculate that? What does that inflation look like on that? And if that does happen, how are we going to supplement our income? And if you don't have that answer, I think that becomes a really big challenge to know that you're getting good advice for longevity in retirement.
And Bill, I think another one that we often encourage people to think about and maybe ask maybe their current advisor or someone they're interviewing is how much training do they spend? What kind of education? What kind of tools do they use, right. for the calculations?
Right.
Social Security is challenging because if somebody's looking to make a living off of selling you something, they can't make a living on selling Social Security.
Well, unfortunately, that's what we experience, and that's why shows like today's show, I think, are important to bring this information, out to the public. That most advisors don't get compensated to give Social Security advice, and so for that reason, they don't get trained, they don't buy the tools, they don't make the investment to bring all these things together. To Matt's point about how is the loss of that spousal benefit going to one half of your income stream could go away when one of the parties passes away with the loss of Social Security, and how's that going to impact your overall plan? So so we need to have a fiduciary advisor that accepts that responsibility. That we're not worried about getting compensated. It's an important component of the financial plan.
And what we can't stress enough is longevity. It's a different world than what it was 15 or 20 years ago.
Exactly. People are living a lot longer.
People are living a lot longer, and you have a pension. So treat it as such. You need to make sure that you make the right decisions as a pension. So if you have questions about your Social Security, about your financial situation, your retirement plans, kind of how it all blends together, we are here for you. We encourage you to schedule a free 30-minute, no cost, no obligation call with one of us. We'll be glad to talk about your situation, determine what you're trying to achieve, and you can find out more about us, and we can determine if there's a fit. Well, we're out of time. So for Bill Davis and Matt Aurenz and the entire Hilltop team, I'm Erik Brenner. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.